Hi, welcome to Pittsburgh Sportsline. I'm Mike Migliori, here joined by Smoking Jim Frazier, Al Levine, the Talking Machine. Got a lot of sports going on this week, a lot of good things to talk about. And well, as usual, we'll start off with our opening segment. Jim, what's on your mind?
I want to apologize to you guys for running a little late today. I ran into another woman who was with Herman Cain. Hey, listen, yesterday had a great event. I want to give a shout out to the Pittsburgh Pirates. MC'd the Willie Stargell MVP banquet along with Rich Fitzgerald, a good friend of mine who just won the election. And also co-MC was Kimberly Gill from KDKA TV. It was a great event. Ever since Willie Stargell passed away, Arm the Hammer Gilliam has been instrumental in helping with the Willie Stargell MVP banquet. Brought in Charles Barkley for us one year, and we honored Armin, the late great Arm the Hammer Gilliam from Bethel Park was honored last night. And moving on is I really hope, well, first of all, congratulations to the Pitt Panthers going to a bowl game in football. The Pittsburgh Steelers really want to win the division because for several reasons they don't want to go in as a wild card. It looks like Tebow is hot. And don't forget, when you go into the playoffs, if you're a wild card team, records are thrown out of the window because the division winners play at home. So if Tebow in Denver wins the division, not only do the Pittsburgh Steelers got to go to the Denver and play, but Troy Polamalu played 25 yards off the ball most of the plays this past game. So Troy's already injured. He may be useless again in the playoffs. Don't forget Ryan Clark, who some people like at free safety, cannot play in Denver because he loses a lot of his vital organs when he's in Denver. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, that could be a tough draw for them. So they want to win out and win the division because they don't want to go to Denver. And lastly, I've said before the season, and I'm saying it now, Heisman Trophy this year goes to Trent Richardson, Alabama.
All right, Jim, Al, what's on your mind?
Well, I was at that Pitt game, and the last time I said what great seats I had. Well, I did have great seats. I tried to get Smoking Jim there, and Mike was a little under the weather that day. But my girlfriend and I had a great time at the game, and we were there early. We're sitting in our club seats inside, nice and toasty in there. And we didn't even get comfortable, but we were looking out at the field, and all of a sudden they kick a pooch kick, and the kid fumbles the ball. Pitt recovers it. Tino, who gets slammed all the time, did throw a nice touchdown pass, and it's 7-0. From then on, it looked a little shaky during the game. Some of the coaching calls and some of the plays, but the defense, they had a defensive player of the week. He had a few sacks, knocked a few balls loose, got fumble recovery, and sealed the victory at the end. But it was a great day for football. The sun was out most of the day, and, fans seemed pretty happy for senior day, and it was nice to see them win like that. Then there seems like there's some more controversy that Wannstedt had an interview and said if that was his son being treated that way by the coach, he would get him out of the system and go somewhere else. He wouldn't put up with that.
Wow.
So that was in one of the things that was getting stirred up there. So we have a lot of different things with the program there. And if you notice, Graham hasn't even been mentioning Sunseri. He talked about his championship caliber type defense, and they did play a great game. And, look at the competition, though, also. But you have some nice players there. Taglinetti made another interception or so. And, it's a nice ball club, but it's not the championship caliber that they talk about. And, for him to be disrespectful these are college kids. They're not the pros. They're not making millions. So you do have to give them a little leniency. And the fans were actually booing Tino when he come in to replace Richardson after the Wildcat a couple times. And you're like, well, he hasn't screwed up too many times. And then sure enough, he ran out of bounds for a 4-yard loss. And it looks like he really doesn't have his head in the game at all times. And you can see the coach yelling at him. Graham continues to yell at him. And it's like he just tuned him out. So that's what's on my mind. We'll move on from that. Thank you.
Nope, thanks, Al. Well, I have to start out with a kind of on a up note. I'd like to give a shout out to Melissa, who is the manager at the Verizon store in the Century 3 Mall. I went through the entire Verizon organization trying to get a problem with my cell phone fixed. Nobody could handle it. Melissa took care of it in about 2 minutes once I finally got to her. Thanks a lot, Melissa. You're doing a great job out there. Also, a couple weeks ago, we talked about the NHL realignment. Well, the NHL did pull the trigger on the realignment. But instead of what they were talking about previously, they kept the Penguins in the same division with the Flyers, the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Devils. And they added the Washington Capitals and the Carolina Hurricane. Instead of cutting it down to two conferences, two divisions, they broke it up into four conferences and pretty much kept everybody aligned with their natural rivals, their geographic rivals. They did a great job. And the reason they did a great job was because a lot of people complained, and I know that we talked about a lot of our viewers calling the NHL offices and giving Gary Bettman a hard time about it, making sure that he did not screw up the Penguins and their rivalry with the Flyers. And so we expect to beat the Flyers every game, every year for the rest of my life. Thanks, guys. Good job, Bettman. Way to listen to your people. All right, well, that being said, the Steelers played a great game against Cincinnati this weekend. Much as I hate to admit it, they did a very good job. Jim, I know you always watch the games. You got a lot of insight going on there. Al, I know you always watch the games. You got a lot of insight going on. What happened this week?
Well, you got Marvin Lewis, who's confused, the Oreo cookie, black on the outside, white on the inside. And when you got a coach that is so confused, it's a lot easier to defeat that team. Cincinnati got a lot of talent. They had a great game plan, but the Pittsburgh Steelers really stepped it up. They're home. The Pittsburgh Steelers needed to play a good game. I think what really helped them was underachieving against the Kansas City Chiefs. They came out focused. They played hard. Again, there's still problems within that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. One, Troy Polamalu's is running around there really not himself the same way. He collapsed and towards the end of last season and was a non-factor in the playoffs. Lamar Woodley, grossly out of shape. Mike Tomlin did a poor job by playing him. He played about 4 or 5 plays, re-injured his hamstring, so keep an eye on that. The Pittsburgh Steelers win by defense and Big Ben, and right now that defense is a little suspect.
Well, the other thing you missed there, Jim, was the special teams. We had the first run back of a punt in 77 games, and that was fantastic to see. Antonio Brown come out there and just went right through all the players, a few missed tackles, and he has the speed, got right through there. And then they put your boy Hines Ward in there for situational passing, got him 5 passes, a couple first downs. So they did that. They were spreading it around, and Big Ben only threw 15 passes. So that shows our running game, even though it wasn't in top form, you still had over 100-some yards with 20-some carries, and that seemed to carry the day, and it helped chew up a little bit of the clock. And the defense was changed by Harrison in his play. That's what I noticed there. When you get a guy in there who's hungry, who's playing like he did at the level he was. And then the Beard, did you notice that the Beard was going wild? Diesel was all over the field.
Yeah, good game.
He was even running down Dalton. One time he looked like he was just going to swarm over him, and he got the pass away. And Dalton's actually played good this year, and he's a rookie. And again, the LeBeau factor did play into this because the players actually performed up to their level. Now, Troy playing 25 yards off the ball, that sure is a sign that he's not right, or they're saving him a little bit because he can only take so much punishment. You guys have seen him up close. Is he 5'10" or 5'11"? I mean, because he doesn't have a lot of height, and the way he throws his body around, it's only a matter of time that you do get hurt. And you know everybody plays hurt. So it's what level that you can do that at.
Imagine Michael let you know that I had quite a bit to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers drafting Antonio Brown in the 6th round. In the major newspaper, I wrote an article, and in the headline the day after the draft, I put, Antonio will replace Antonio. And I tell you what, Antonio Brown reminds me of Santonio Holmes a lot. Both guys want the ball. Antonio Brown's a lot faster, and I tell you what, you would have Santonio if you put a blunt in Antonio's hand.
Well, we saw what they did against Cincinnati this week. Cincinnati's a good team, but it's a young team. I think that in sometime in the not too distant future, people might start talking about Dalton and Green the same way they talked about Young and Rice or Montana and Rice. Not that they would probably necessarily be quite as good, but possibly as effective at winning football games. I think they're a very good combination as long as they can both stay healthy and both stay on the same team in this time of free agency. I think that's something to look forward to, something that will be a lot of fun to watch. As long as maybe not so much for Steeler fans during Steeler games, but if you watch them during other games or whatever, I think they're a good combination to watch. I think it'll be, again, a lot of fun to watch them play football together. As far as the Steelers, well, I mean, obviously they've got 2 games against Cleveland. You try to think that's never going to be a problem. They do have a game against San Francisco, which could be a measuring stick for them. San Francisco has been a very good team this year. But as you look at the Steelers, what do you think about the Steelers with the possible matchups? Like you said, Jim, they don't want to have to go to Denver because one of their starters in the defense or in the secondary can't play there. Brian can't play there because Brian Clark can't play there because of his health issues. The elevation, the thin oxygen and such is not good for him. It's not healthy. He can't make that trip. Aside from Denver, who else do you think that they may have to worry about?
And just to get back, Green and Dalton may not be Jerry Rice and Steve Young. It could be O'Brien and Al Toon, who ended his career quickly with concussions. I love the way Green plays, but he's tall, thin, takes some big hits, and I see his head bouncing off the turf all the time. But the team that scares me most always is the New York Jets. I'm a big Rex Ryan fan. The New York Jets have a couple Bill Cowers receivers in Santonio Holmes and Plexico Burress. They run the football very well. They get after you defensively. You can't get open against Darrelle Revis. At least Hines Ward wouldn't be able to. And so that matchup is always scary because even if you beat them, it's like my man that knows all the black teams, the old Westinghouse high school teams back in the day, they say win or lose, you lose because the next week your team is so beat up, they're not that effective. So the New York Jets and also the Baltimore Ravens, who has the greatest defensive player in NFL history, and Ray Lewis, scares me all the time.
And they're resting Ray another week, so he'll be more than prepared. Did you hear that? He's not going to play this week either.
No, I didn't hear. But
yeah, they're saving him another week.
I'll go to the man that knows everything about the inside black.
Well, I try.
Thanks for the Black Diamond book as well.
Well, sure. We won't go off subject here on baseball, but you'll appreciate it. So, but no, I do have some insights there, and I read about a lot of things there. But I do pick up on some of these trivial things which are important to you. They fill in some of the gaps here. And I agree with you on who could be trouble because the Jets they have a tough game, and you never know with Sanchez if he does complete a few of those passes. He has some guys that can catch that ball, so that's a good thing for him. And the running game, is a little shaky at times with injuries and stuff. So we do take a pounding on the defense. So I agree with you.
Well, the team that I picked earlier in the season to win the AFC was the Houston Texans. Unfortunately, they go through quarterbacks, 1 or 2 a week. Who knows who's going to be playing quarterback for them by the time the playoffs roll around. But also, like Jim said, the Jets could be tough. New England is always tough come playoff time. They don't look so great this season as compared to previous seasons during the regular season, but always, when playoffs come around, the New England Patriots step it up. And, well, looking at the possible wild card teams, people never talk about the Oakland Raiders, but they're very close to being in there. Mm-hmm. They could very well make the playoffs, and they're a team that's again a young team, but they have some pretty decent players too. They're a team that nobody really talks about that much, at least not being on the East Coast. we don't really pay that much attention to them. People watch the Steelers game and they don't really pay too much attention to the late games. But that's another team that I think you have to take a good look at. Not necessarily be totally concerned about them, but at least be aware that they're there. So that's my thoughts on the Steelers for the potential, their playoff potential. It looks like, with the exception of San Francisco, there's really no teams left on their schedule that should be a problem for them. Of course, I mean, that's the teams that you lose to sometimes are the ones that shouldn't be a problem. But anyway, that's my ideas on that. How about the rest of the NFL? Who else do you like maybe in the NFC?
Well, of course, like I predicted last year, and it wasn't very popular, that and the team that was inferior last year to superior this year. Last year, the Green Bay Packers really were not a great football team. They had a lot of players injured. They were young. They were still trying to find themselves, but I predicted they would beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Super Bowl. And that's the team that everybody's chasing. It looks like now that Green Bay may go undefeated. Mercury Morris may not be happy about that, but I think that it's Green Bay and everybody else are so much better than everybody else in the league. And I think the only way to truly defeat Green Bay is to put Aaron Rodgers out. The New York Giants did a good job because they're one of the few teams in the National Football League right now that can put pressure on a quarterback with the front four. No teams like that. Other teams have to blitz, and Aaron Rodgers just eats that blitz up. And I like the San Francisco 49ers right now. Their superstar linebacker is out with a hamstring injury, and he's the leader and the heart and soul of that ball club. But I like San Fran, but I love Green Bay.
Well, I'm a big Green Bay fan also. I had similar thoughts. I wasn't publicized on the airwaves, but I did like Green Bay throughout the season just because of the talent they have. And then again, the Pittsburgh connection with Mike McCarthy out of Greenfield and Central Catholic. So he's just a very good coach. He has a lot of good coaches with him, and they keep the players, pretty straight on what their focus is. He doesn't even talk about winning a second Super Bowl. He's worried about one game at a time, and that surely sounds like Chuck Noll. So, I mean, they have a great team out there, and, I think they win it all. There's no doubt. I do feel that the Steelers have a chance to get into the Super Bowl, so I believe that it'll be the Steelers and Packers for a rematch, and sad to say, even though I'm a Steeler fan, they're going to lose to the Packers. I don't see them getting stopped. And a point Mike made about Oakland, one of the reasons us Steeler fans don't want to acknowledge Oakland is just that animosity that we have towards the Raiders. But they have a decent team there if they can stay healthy and get some of these guys back to playing. And I did want to touch on a point that Mike had liked Houston earlier in the year, and my hat goes off to him on the players and the defense that they have. And they have this kid Yates in there who he's been playing great. So a third-string quarterback is making some of the plays and offensive moves that they needed. So, Mike, that's still a heck of a pick. Your sleeper just might be a winner in there if we don't make it. So.
And Magic Mike, the one thing that we know is that every time Aaron Rodgers goes to the bank and cashes his check, he has a picture of William Gay in his wallet.
What, catch in front of William Gay? Did somebody say that once or twice before?
That's probably true.
It is true.
I like Green Bay also. I think, they're obviously the best team in the league right now. But, the best team in the league doesn't always win. I think you have to, if you're in Green Bay, you have to take a hard look at the New Orleans Saints. The Green Bay did beat them in the opening game of the season, but I think that there's definitely a rematch looming there somewhere. I think the Saints are a very good team. They have a nice defense, and Drew Brees is maybe as good a quarterback as Aaron Rodgers, maybe better. But again, a very good quarterback with a lot of nice weapons to play with.
I'm sorry.
So it's just one of those things. It's up in the air. It's hard to say, okay, this and that. These two teams are going to be in the Super Bowl. My head tells me that it has to be Green Bay. But I think that, like I said, anything can happen, and the New Orleans Saints, pretty good team.
And a lot of times, too, I look at, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I look at what they don't have and what they passed up in the draft. I remember 2 years ago, when Pittsburgh Steelers had 3 picks in the 6th round, and I was pushing for them to take LeGarrette Blount, and they would not take LeGarrette Blount because, Mendenhall never fit the Pittsburgh Steelers system. Great talent, great back, but he's not a bloody-your-nose type back. I thought LeGarrette Blount did, but the Pittsburgh Steelers told me that they felt that he had too much baggage just because he knocked a guy out with 1 punch. To me, that's Steeler football right there.
Like we were talking about last week with some of these old-time Steelers who would go to after-hours clubs and all that other stuff. They were tough guys. And you made a point about some of these teams like the Jets, Ravens, Steelers. They hurt players during a game. So if you have a tough game, like even against New England, you beat them up so badly that they're not that good even if they've beaten you because their players are all hurt a little more so. So I do understand that. And since we're Green Bay fans here tonight, I wanted to tell you that you can actually own a share. They're one of the few teams that have stock out there, and they have a new stock issue coming out, 250,000 shares, $250 each. So if you want to buy a share of the Green Bay Packers, the stock price isn't allowed to go up or anything, so I'll give you some more trivia, but you can actually own that piece of stock for $250 and keep it forever, pass it on, or whatever you want to do with it. But they are selling additional stock to finance their stadium to make it more state-of-the-art and increase the revenues. So that's another tip.
So I'm going to grab me $250 share and be the first black owner in the NFL.
Well, let me ask you something, Al. Being a Steelers fan that you are, personally, I would have no problem with this. But if you buy stock in the Green Bay Packers and they play the Steelers in the Super Bowl, who do you want to win? I mean, you own one team. You own one team and you cheer for the other. Who do you want to win?
You're making me go off subject a little bit. We've had a couple discussions that I'll jump around on things, but I know you guys will appreciate my comment. All I have to do is mention one name, Don King. And you understand exactly what I'm talking about. So I can be
he
like...
owes you money too?
No. I could be like Don King. Thanks for being my straight guy there. But that way I'd have a piece of both teams. My heart would be for the Steelers, and my stock would be with the Packers. My $250 share, I'd buy one share. But that's my answer.
Well, okay.
I'm glad you asked that question, though.
And, well, in addition to the fact that the Steelers look like they're locked to make the playoffs, we have the Pittsburgh Panthers are actually going to a bowl this year. They're going to play Southern Methodist University, I believe. And also Penn State is going to go to a bowl, and they're going to play the University of Houston. Personally, I think the Penn State-Houston game may be one of the better bowl games this year. I think Houston's not a bad team at all. They got a nice quarterback. Penn State has a fairly decent defense this year. There's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of distractions as far as that goes because of the Penn State scandals. And also there'll be a lot of people talking about why Houston, being only a one-loss team, is playing in the, such a distant bowl from the ones that you actually want to play in. Again, the national championship game is going to be a rematch between LSU and Alabama. It was a very good game the first time around. Probably be another good game. Another very big defensive game. Alabama has the running back Trenton that you think that could be the edge, but it wasn't the first time around. If I was the head coach at the University of Alabama, I would have every person in the entire student body kicking field goals this week to try to find one male or female to get out there and try to win this football game, because it's going to be another defensive struggle. And the reason Alabama lost the first time around is they cannot kick a field goal.
Exactly.
And I think I might be the only person in southwestern Pennsylvania to watch Southern Mississippi beat Houston. Houston is an excellent ball club. And I think the Penn State-Houston game is a great matchup. Penn State, Bradley, I know, is happy he's not the defensive coordinator going into this game.
He did say that today.
Because they're wide open. But if you remember Penn State years ago, when they took down the University of Miami, they really come up. If you give Penn State quite a number of weeks to prepare, they usually come up with a great game plan defensively to get the job done. The only question is, whether they're going to allow the coaching staff to pack up and move all their stuff out before or after the game, because they're all done right after that game. So
I agree with you. They're not going to keep those guys. And Houston is the #1 offensive team in college football, which that's going to be quite the test for the defense. So that's sort of why Bradley had said today that he kidding around, but I think he was serious that he wasn't the defensive coordinator. So it is a tough game, and we'll see what happens there.
And hopefully people tune in January 7th to watch Pitt play. I like SMU. I mean, SMU had Emmanuel Sanders from the Pittsburgh Steelers, old tenderfoot, often injured Emmanuel Sanders, which was a reach in the 3rd round from SMU. So they're going to throw the football around. So Pitt can get down by a lot of points because they have a hard time scoring points. So that should be an interesting game. Hopefully people will tune in. That's not a ideal situation for a team to play January 7th, because at that point they only want the national they're only looking forward to the national championship game.
Okay, so now we're talking about the national championship game. I like LSU again. Jim, I know you're an Alabama fan. What do you think?
Well, being that LSU is playing at home this time, they're playing in New Orleans, that's going to be a huge disadvantage to Alabama. But you can't count out the Alabama coaching staff that, believe me, it's a win-win, because the Alabama head coach turned the LSU program around. He won a national championship with LSU. His footprint is all over that university. But I think that the best player on the field offensively is going to be Trent Richardson. I think that Alabama has a slightly better quarterback. Neither the quarterbacks on either team is NFL caliber. So, it's going to be a great defensive game, a lot of hard hitting. And Trent Richardson, I would run him till his body parts start to fall off.
Well, I have to agree with you. I was with LSU the first time. I thought LSU could win just because of the role they were on and just how fired up they were, and who knew that you couldn't kick a field goal, like Mike said. And I think they'll find a kicker who can at least get him a field goal, and Trent Richardson's an animal there, and he should win the Heisman, like you're saying. He has all the attributes that you want in your athlete and what he's done for the team. So if they do run him and they do make a few plays like that, I'm going with Alabama this time.
But believe me, though, if I had a vote in the Heisman, even though I predicted that Trent would win it, if I was voting for the Heisman Trophy like Tim Tebow is allowed to do, former Heisman Trophy winner, I would vote for Ball, the running back for Wisconsin. Outstanding back. He's getting ready to break Barry Sanders' record of over 39 scoring touchdowns in one season. Had a great season. I think he's really the uncrowned Heisman Trophy winner, but I think that Trent Richardson will win it, and Andrew Luck will probably steal if he decides to come out, because he's still got another year of college if he wants it. He'll be the first player picked overall in the NFL bus.
Okay, well, we gave our predictions for the game. Let me ask you, should this actually be the game? Do you think that maybe Oklahoma State should be playing for the national championship instead of Alabama? They had a very good game against Oklahoma. Alabama's already played LSU. Why not give Oklahoma State a chance? Or do you think that this is the right matchup?
Especially the way Oklahoma State tore apart Oklahoma team, which is the rivalry game. Oklahoma State only has one loss, and the athletic department was in disarray at the time because they lost in a plane crash. Some of the people in that athletic family, and they had to play that very same day against Iowa State, and they just weren't. You can tell they just weren't prepared emotionally and mentally to play that football game. But I would love to see LSU and Oklahoma State play the football game. I think it'll be a lot like what happened with Georgia, close in the first half, and then LSU blows out Oklahoma State in the second half. But it'd be great quotes from the head coach, Gundy. Gundy after the game is some great quotes.
He is. I think the proper thing is Alabama and LSU. If Alabama wasn't playing LSU, they'd be screaming for that, because who would they have lost to? That's the point. Oklahoma State, they're a very good team. and their offense, they get after you with the offense. But I think Alabama and LSU is the proper game for that under the BCS, and I don't really like the BCS. So with the rules that we have and the way they play games, I think it's a proper choice.
But from a marketing standpoint, Stanford LSU would be the game. I mean, you can really get after marketing and advertising people. They can really push the offense with Andrew Luck for Stanford, and a great defense with Matthews, number 7 for LSU, and all their defensive backs are NFL caliber. So that would be a very good, because I just don't think that this game, Alabama LSU, is really exciting to a whole lot of people to really see again.
Well, a defensive struggle does make it a little tough to watch a game, because a 6-3 game or a 9-5 game or something, that could bother a few people. But going on your point with Stanford and Luck, wouldn't that go play in the defense's hand, because you say how Luck is really a fraud there and he's out of luck? I've heard you enough. So I'm glad that they're not playing that, because it could be a blowout the other way. So.
Well, the reason that I think LSU Alabama loses its luster is because not only is it a rematch, it's a rematch of a game that wasn't played all that long ago. It's not like they played at the beginning of the season and now they're getting back together. It was 2-3 weeks ago that they played.
Yes.
That's something that I think takes away from it, takes away from the marketing even. How do you hype a game where one team's already beaten the other one? Even if Oklahoma State or Stanford comes in as one-loss teams, they didn't lose that to the team that they're going to play again.
Mm-hmm.
So that, to me, I think that hurts them in the marketing department. And that's it. What other matchups, what other bowl games do you like? What do you think's a good game coming up?
Well, I'm wearing my Mountaineer colors today. West Virginia is going to a very good bowl game for winning the Big East. And who's West Virginia playing?
I didn't get to look at all the bowl matchups. There's only 35 bowls, just so you know. I was looking at the total, because I go, there's a lot of these bowls. I looked at BVD, XY, LMNOP, and I said, where's that being played at? But I mean, I'm just kidding a little bit. But there are 70 teams are playing. So maybe for the next show, I'll study a little more, because I looked at these, and there's just so many that are out there, 35. So.
Yeah, I know that. I can't think of who West Virginia is playing, but it's a good matchup. It's an exciting matchup. I can't wait to see it.
Who's Wisconsin going to end up playing?
I think the Wisconsin's going to Rose Bowl, I believe. And, whoever they're playing are going to beat.
They're playing the Ducks.
Ooh, so now that'll be a good game.
I like that matchup.
That's going to be a good game.
Right, that should be one of the better matchups when you think about that.
I tell you what, that's going to be on New Year's Day, right about the time you start eating your chitlins and
greens.
Your greens. Yeah.
Greens are good. I'll be over. What time are you serving? I'm an eater, a hardcore eater. So you aren't going to scare me. All right, I might scare you with an eating performance there. So I'll be over. Was that an invite? I'm kidding.
So that should be real good. That should be real good, Magic Mike. Wisconsin and Oregon. I think that's a game that my DVR will be running full time for that one.
Well, like I said, on the way over here, I heard that the Pittsburgh Pirates were trying to re-sign Nate McLouth. Mm-hmm. And thinking about Nate McLouth and his time with the Pirates, I decided that a good question that we could, ask each other is, who do you think was the biggest bust in the entire history of Pittsburgh sports? Nate McLouth might be on your list, but I'm sure there have been bigger. Al, what do you think?
Oh my goodness, there's a bunch of them over time. There was a thing called the Mendoza line, since you were talking about the Pirates, Mario Mendoza, which meant he didn't hit over 200. So I mean, since we're on the baseball thing, I'll put him up there as one of the biggest busts, who was a full-time player, which this is going back a few years, but you actually hear sports announcers talk about the Mendoza line.
Right, but Mendoza, I mean, was he ever expected to hit over 200? He wasn't like a number one draft pick or anything like
true.
that.
That's true.
Oh, no. Jim?
Well, the biggest bust, in 2003, I almost got thrown out of the Steeler facilities, because when they were about to draft Alonzo Jackson, I told them that why don't they just draft Huey Richardson. Huey Richardson was the first-round draft choice in maybe NFL history to get cut by the team. So Huey Richardson, former first-round draft pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers, 1991, got to be the biggest bust in NFL history.
That's a great choice. I forgot all about that. He had me on the baseball kick. He threw that Nate McLouth out there.
Well, I mean, I guess you consider a number one pick a bust. I got to go in a different direction. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers have always been known for their running game. And I believe Pittsburgh Steelers had two of the greatest running backs in the history of the game. And I know some people, when you say, I think Franco Harris and Jerome Bettis. Personally, I think Chris Fumatumafala and Deuce Staley are two of the greatest running backs in the history of the game. No, you can laugh, but I'll tell you what. Those guys ran with authority, they ran with speed, and they ran with power. The only thing they didn't run with was the ball because they never played. Right? They sat around. Chris Fumatumafala tripped over a blade of grass and missed a season. And Deuce Staley never, ever saw an injury that he couldn't milk for 3 or 4 months at a time. Deuce Staley's game jersey was a gray sweatshirt and a pair of gray sweatpants. So personally, I think this guy who was touted so highly coming out of Philadelphia, and people went on and on about how good he was going to do for the Steelers, he did nothing. So that's my choice for biggest bust in the entire history of sports world.
I'm voting for Huey now. Huey Richardson covers.
And we can put maybe the ABA team, the recent ABA team that was brought here to Pittsburgh that played in Mellon Arena in front of, several 25, 30, 40, 50 people in the empty arena.
Not at once. That's over the course of the season.
That had to be a bust bringing professional basketball to Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Professional basketball just doesn't, make it here in Pittsburgh. I don't know why, but we did have a couple teams like Condors, and they did win a championship, and the Pipers and.
Connie Hawkins.
Right, they did play some nice basketball. I did see a couple of those games, too. I was around there, Jim.
I know a lot of people say that. Personally, I'm not so sure that bringing the NBA to Pittsburgh that it would necessarily be a bust. I think that Pittsburgh's got a lot of knowledgeable sports fans. I think that that it would be well received. It might take a while for it to grab hold, but I think that it would be pretty well received. The only real necessity would be that they would have to come in as a winner, coming in as an expansion team, coming in like a team like the Explosion that Jim mentioned. They had a couple of decent players, but they just they weren't good enough. Then they didn't have as good enough a record to capture the interest of people. And again, there's the media coverage of it was not all that good either. We went down. We actually worked a couple of those games, and it was not. It was just not covered as well as it should have been. Of course, it wasn't the NBA. If an NBA team comes in, they'd have a lot more backing. But I think that I think Pittsburgh sports fans they're pretty knowledgeable, and they like a winner. And if a team came in here and did well, then I'm sure we'd get some support.
Well, they did try that a few times going back, the 70s. And what happened is the people don't have the deep pockets. There was even a gentleman, I forget, Littman was his last name, who was involved with boxing. And they tried to finance a lot of this stuff. And you just don't have the pro game that's entrenched like it is here. Like Mike always kids about us Steeler fans. That's part of the problem, because you're running the game at the same time that you have Steelers during that season. And then we have this other team that's a winning team called the Penguins, who have class ownership. So you're behind, the 8 ball, literally, figuratively, and everything else to try to bring a winning team in. That's hard enough as it is with all the prima donnas. So, I mean, that it is a problem. They have tried with marketing, but it seems like they can't get more, even during the heydays of the Pipers and Condors. Maybe you get 12, 13,000, 15,000 at most, but they only would get like 6,000, 5,000. And you can't support a team on a limited fan base, even though we have a rabid sports fan base.
At Christmas time, everybody goes sees the Harlem Globetrotters.
Okay.
Listen, the University of Pittsburgh, you can't get a ticket for the University of Pittsburgh. The WPIAL finals is always a sellout. I think that Pittsburgh fans would support the NBA if you did it the right way. You got to have some blue-collar players, some players that had some great work ethic. You got to get after the ball. You got to work hard, and you got to bring Mike Cuban in to run the team. But I think that they would support it. But you can't have prima donnas going on. Like what you're looking at with Philadelphia's football team, a great talent. Deshaun Jackson's pretty much quit on his team because he didn't get the right type of contract yet. And I think that a lot of guys in the NBA are just like that. So if you get a few of those guys, the Pittsburgh fan base will turn their back on it. But this, fan base here loves basketball, a great basketball tradition. So I think it would work. But I'm not putting any of my money into it.
Well, see, that's the problem. That's the problem. To put your money into it, you need deep pockets. Like Cuban has the deep pockets, but I don't know if he's ready for leaving the Mavericks. Remember, he brought them from a losing team, and he bought a jet that they have all their own workouts, special areas for him, and all that other stuff. So, it is a tough thing, but you make some great points if they had the players and the blue-collar type attitude. and you have that with Pitt and these other teams like Duquesne. Look at the game they just played against Pitt.
Well, you did bring up the Penguins. They had a not so good a game last night against the Boston Bruins, but they are playing fairly well. I don't know. To me personally, I think it's a foregone conclusion that the Penguins are going to play for the Stanley Cup this year. Boston is having a really good run right now. They've won like 14 in a row. That won't last forever. The Penguins' next game up is against the Philadelphia Flyers and their old friend Jaromir Jagr and Max Talbot. This is one that I'm really looking forward to. I think that the Penguins, of course, can beat them, but I think that this might be a real interesting game to watch. And again, with the new realignment in the Philadelphia Flyers and the Pittsburgh Penguins staying in the same division, I think this rivalry is going to get even bigger and maybe uglier than it has been in the past. And bringing the Capitals in, Al talked about a couple weeks ago about the rivalry between the Capitals and the Penguins, bringing the Capitals back into the division. I think will make that one maybe get a little bit nastier also. I think that the Penguins are, personally, I think they're the most fun team to watch, the most exciting team for the money that we have available here in Pittsburgh. And so far, I mean, up at least up through last season, I think the Pitt Panthers basketball team is the second most exciting team to watch. Two teams that always show a lot of heart, are always in the game, usually good enough to win it. I think the Panthers a little bit younger this year, but they should gel together fairly well. And the Penguins, well, with three of the best players in the league, maybe the top three players in the league with Crosby, Malkin, and Fleury. I think that Pittsburgh sports fans are very lucky this season to have the Penguins doing what they're doing, the Steelers doing what they're doing, and the Pitt Panthers also playing.
And Mike, I can never cheer against Jagr, but he's the greatest hockey player I've ever seen. But do you think that the Penguins, now that Crosby has come back, because they played so hard when Crosby was injured, do you think now that he's back that they're looking for Crosby to do a lot more, and maybe the other pieces are not picking it up like they were before?
No, I don't necessarily think so. I think there are guys on the team, newer guys, well, not younger guys, but guys new to the team, like James Neal and Sullivan, that are trying to show that they belong here, playing very hard. The problem with the Bruins last night is three of the Penguins' starting defensemen, Mikhailiuk, Letang, and England are injured. They're out. They have three rookie defensemen in playing against a team like Boston last night. That was bound to be a problem. Another problem, and one that I mean has always been a mystery with the Penguins, is that their power play, for whatever reason, does not produce. They had two lengthy 5-on-3 power plays last night, and they didn't do anything with them. They got off a lot of shots. They couldn't score, and you can't give up a 2-minute 5-on-3 power play and not score a goal and expect to win that game.
And we forgot to give the number out. Al, but I want to thank your family member for texting that.
That's my biggest fan, Hope.
Hope.
She
Keep
come
Hope
through
alive.
again.
West Virginia's playing Clemson. Thanks a lot, Hope.
She listens to the show and she's faithful, so she said she'll help us out again when we need it. But on the point with the Penguins, Jim, I think that they're going to be fine. And like Mike brought up the point that you have 3 guys come up from Wilkes-Barre. And they actually played a pretty good game. You got a team that's on a roll. We've talked about winners. When you have a team that's winning like they are, since Halloween, they had a losing record, Boston. Now they're back to the championship caliber. And it's like they say, when you're on a streak, a winning streak, it just keeps going and going. But eventually that streak does come to an end. And we've had a lot of injuries, so we're not peaking too early. So that's a good thing. Look at how hard and gritty these players are. So I think we'll be fine. You know, like Mike has said all along, we do have one of the most fun teams to watch and talented. And even these young guys that come up, they showed some grittiness and fired some pucks in there. And that 5-on-3 twice that we had was so frustrating because all I kept yelling was just shoot the puck. Just get that puck in there on the goalie, because Thomas was standing on his head making these fantastic saves, one after the other. It was like, how is he even doing it? So right now they're playing lights out, as we say, and I think that will change after a while, and maybe they are peaking a little early. I'm going to remain hopeful since they are the champs, and when you have a champ playing championship level, you got to take their hat off to them.
Yeah, well, that's true, Al. We covered a lot of the football. Jim, as far as the Pitt Panthers basketball team, what are we looking forward to this year?
Well, they're playing a pretty good yardstick tonight. They're playing the also tough VMI, you know. So you're playing a lot of guys who will be second lieutenants in the armed forces in a couple of years. But you know, I agree with you, Mike. You know, Pitt went out and got a parade All-American. Dante Taylor, worth parade All-American in history of that voting system.
McDonald's, I got to correct
McDonald's.
That's an advertising thing.
Yeah, that's even greater. But
right.
You know, like Pitt is young. You know, they got some guys that can fill it up. Jamie Dixon, he inherited a team from a great coach, and he's just keeping it going at a Sweet 16 level, and that's exactly where they're at this year, Sweet 16 or you know, top 32 level.
Right. Well, this everybody knows that the Big East. That Pitt has left the Big East and is going to the ACC. In football, I don't know if that makes that big a difference because Pitt's just not a great football program anymore, and the ACC just is not a great football conference. Even though they've got people that used to be perennial great teams like Florida State and Miami, maybe not so much anymore. Clemson had a great team this year. I think West Virginia might be in a little bit of trouble in that bowl game. But as far as basketball, either the Big East, my personal opinion, the Big East was the best basketball conference.
Oh, yeah.
And if not, then it would have been the ACC. I think that Pitt going down to get involved with Duke and North Carolina every year, I don't know that they can expect to be on top all the time like they did here. The one team that I used to love to watch Pitt play is Connecticut, and you know we won't see that anymore unless something happens in the tournament at the end of the year. But I think that's a matchup that I will miss seeing. I think the move from the Big East to the ACC was a bad move for the University of Pittsburgh, but again it was a money move. Obviously, they think that they will get better football coverage, better television deals and stuff with the ACC. So it's always a money situation there. But I think again, like I said, my personal loss will be watching Pitt play Connecticut a couple times a year. Jim, what do you think as far as that move? How do you think Pitt fares in the ACC as far as basketball?
Well, I agree with you as usual, Mike. I think that it was a a deal that was driven mainly for football, and Pitt is not a football institution anymore. The Big East was #1 in basketball. You know, Pitt made their mark in basketball in the Big East. The Big East allowed them to continue to recruit strong players out of New York and New Jersey, where there's a lot of great basketball players. And you're not going to be able to do that when you move down south, because these guys want to be able to play with their family and friends, can at least see them play a couple of times a year. I think the ACC is going to be different. There's some great coaches in the ACC. I think Jamie Dixon will get exposed in that league. You know, I just think that football-wise, you look at the Big East, they're not quitting. I think they're bringing in Boise State and a couple other teams just signed today. They come into the Big East, so the Big East is going to be live and well even without University of Pittsburgh.
Well, I also agree with you guys on this, so make it unanimous. And the other thing is, like Mike had said earlier, and I think Jim mentioned, Madison Square Garden. You know, what a venue for basketball. I mean, you took something away from these kids and recruits that will hurt the program. There is no doubt about it, because we've watched that for how long, these games, and it's just fantastic to see that atmosphere and have a hometown flavor in Madison Square Garden. I mean, we're losing that. And it was all money generated, as we know, and that's one of the disappointments of, again, the BCS and what they force these conferences to do. Look, you're going to have 3 teams come from out west to the Big East. So what a fraud the Big East is. And they probably will be fine, because you're bringing in some teams that can play football. So, but I mean, it is a shame to see this happening. I'm more a traditionalist, that you'd like to see some of these things stay the same with the traditions. And we're not going to have that. Even the Pitt-West Virginia game. You know, I'll miss that game, because a lot of people have moved to West Virginia and vice versa. So you have a lot of interaction with the people, and you're not going to have that anymore. So,
well, I won't go so far as to call them the Big East a fraud because they're adding San Diego State. They might just be geographically challenged. So that's yeah, but that does seem like a stretch to bring San Diego State and Boise State into a conference called the Big East. I guess maybe a name change could be in order, but they're also bringing University of Central Florida. That's somewhere in the East.
Those are good points, but if you're called the Big East, it should be the East. So marketing-wise and PR-wise, they may have to change it. The Big East West, maybe.
And I tell you what, a couple of you deserve credit's got to go out. Montour High School did a great job. We're in the PIAA playoffs in high school football. Montour was down 21-0 to a tough Grove City team, where the running back ran for 270 yards on them. But they didn't give up. They fought back, ended up winning that football game. Hats off to Clairton. Clairton's one game away from Tom Braddock's winning streak. I'm starting to get back on the Clairton bandwagon. I really didn't think that they had that. They were going to be down a little bit this year, but they just continue to keep coming up with players after players after players. I like to see the academic transcripts on some of these kids. And I tell you what, Aliquippa keeps rolling on. So, and North Allegheny's doing a great job. They beat State College. So.
Well, you brought up a great point about the Clairton bandwagon. We were sitting at the Pitt game, and of course, you know, I talked to people. Well, we met some people from the Johnstown area, and they said the team that Clairton played was like one of their hometown teams, and they beat them last year. I think it was 56-0.
Wow.
And they said that it was just like seeing men playing boys, and I think it's the same team that's going to play Clairton again. So you may have to, you jumped on the bandwagon at the right time. But that's what we just heard on Saturday, and you know, they said that Clairton, they watched the game and they were there, but it was a tough game to watch.
Yeah, Clairton beating Stowe Rocks. I really didn't see that happening, but not only did they beat them, they destroyed Stowe Rocks.
Well, Jim, I mean, you know, we all know that you're a scout for the NFL. What about the local high school players? Who this year were standouts?
Well, I tell you what, I'll give you a guy that nobody's heard of. Is a young man from Shadyside Academy, first black quarterback in Shadyside Academy history. You know, Mitchell just signed an athletic scholarship to go to Wisconsin. of course, this is the running back time of the year for Western Pennsylvania. Produced some outstanding running backs, and I think the greatest running back player to ever come out of WPIL and maybe the state of Pennsylvania, Russell Shell from Hopewell, is going to add some life to the Pitt program over the next 3 or 4 years whenever he decides to go professional. But and also the young kid for Central Catholic, Jones Moore Jones. He got 2 last names. He's going to Toledo on an athletic scholarship to run that football. So WPIL did a great job this year in the running back positions.
There's no real quarterbacks that you see out there? Because usually we have at least 1 or 2. What about that Dakota kid from Upper St. Clair? Is he a junior or a senior?
He's a senior. He's going to Pitt as a linebacker. But I think the best quarterback in the WPIL was 6,000-yard passer in Montour Bretzel, I believe how you say his name. 6'4", 6'5". He got a lot of upside, real thin, won a state basketball championship. He was part of that team last year, and when they, depending on how far they go in football, I think they got an excellent basketball team coming back as well.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. We had a pretty good show this week. We be back next week. I understand Al has a cousin. Might have something to
Hold
do
on,
with
let me
the
interrupt
hockey team.
Let me interrupt you. Coach is good hockey.
He does.
His name is Stu Rolnick, and if they watch us on YouTube, he will be here next week at 20 to 7. He said at 6:40 he'll be here next week, and we'll see Stu then.
All right, then. So we're gonna talk a little bit about Pitt hockey next week. And we'll cover the Steelers again, the Penguins. We'd love to have you involved. We'll have the phone lines open again next week. If you're watching, please give us a call. We'd love to talk to you. And thanks a lot. Have a good week, and we'll see you next Tuesday.